Hey guys, Coach here. Hey, thanks for joining me. Hey, as promised last week, this particular week we're talking about irrigation, but from the designing aspect side. Actually taking it from up here and putting it down on paper, like on a overlay of your design or a copy of your design, and is going to be dedicated solely to irrigation, even though you have plants and that kind of stuff already put on there. Hey, I'm glad that you're here. I think you will learn something here, and it's basically drafting 101 when it comes to irrigation application. It's a very simplistic yard, very hypothetical yard, but you'll kind of notice that this design is a very functional yard, so feel free to take it and use it if it works for you. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started, shall we? Hey everybody, back at the drawing table, and I wanted to show you our home of the hypotheticals. That's who lives here. So this is going to be a hypothetical landscape. And you will notice that I do not have a lot of the detail that I would normally have, like in the design series that I did a little while ago. If you want to see those, you should go back and check it out. Look at the job site design that I did. This is strictly irrigation and irrigation only. So when you look at it, you'll see a couple of plant things, but that's just for reference only. It's not actually how the yard would look. But I've made it as simplistic as possible. And let's walk through it just a little bit, shall we? Now, remember, there's a couple of terms that I'd like you to become familiar with. One is POC. That's always going to be your point of connection, where you're going to tap into some water source at your home and dedicate that tapping in to your irrigation system and any other yard or landscape water that you deem necessary. And in this particular case, our point of connection was put in by the builder, hypothetically, and they gave me a stub just inside the back gate here, where I've been able to dig down, find where it's at, and turn the water off temporarily and connect in to that point of connection. And then along the side of the house, I have run my main pressurized line right along the foundation where the foundation allows me. I've gone behind the air conditioning unit, underneath the master bedroom walkway, and over here, very, very close to the kitchen window, etc. So, point of connection. The next one is IV, irrigation valves. On a design for sprinkler or landscape, where you see the icon IV usually means the irrigation valves or the valve assembly and where it's going to be located. A real key thing when you're doing this is to place your valves at a convenient location. Here we have a very large patio with the family room slider, kitchen windows, master bedroom, and we can walk right up to the valve assembly. And we can turn them on manually. We can inspect them very easily. And in the same trench as the point of connection, we can run from our timer plug location over here. We can run that wire right in the same trench. So you're getting, killing two birds with one stone. When you bring your point of connection over next to your valves, say, for instance, you're a weekend warrior and you only have so much time every week to dedicate to this project. So if you're able to, on one Saturday, find your point of connection, tap into it, and then bring it over and put a shutoff valve under the ground in a irrigation valve box, and you can turn that thing off. And maybe that's all you're going to be able to do that particular weekend. And it's okay, because you can let the solvents and other things dry up, then you can turn your main water back on, and you have now a stubbed out shut-off valve area right at your irrigation valve. And what I want to impress upon you most is think about now, but also think about the future. And in this particular case, I have not only designed in an irrigation valve, but I've also put a hose bib back here because the builder did not have a hose bib on the back of the house. And I have considered a pressurized line through the yard and over to the shed area because we don't like dragging hoses long distances. So we have a hose bib here and we have a hose bib here. In addition to all the landscape watering, you now have the ability to wash off the back of the house, rinse off doggo's paws before you bring him in the house, rinse off the lawnmower before you put it away, and you have a much more convenient spot to do that in. Irrigation valves, in this particular case, I have detailed it down to a 5-valve system. We have 1, 2, 3 dedicated to the lawn area out here. Each one is color-coded, and each one represents how many gallons per minute per zone. So you know, since this is a 1-inch pipe system, we're going to hypothetically say that. 1-inch pipe. So we know right about 13 gallons per minute at 50 psi, we know that we're going to get 13 gallons. So valve number 1 has 12, 2 has 11, and 3 has 9. So our sprinkler system is going to perform very, very well. Then the other 2 valves that we have here are for the planter beds next to the foundation. And this one valve is going to be drip irrigating this bed and this bed. And this particular valve is going to run out almost to the fence line, get stubbed up, and this will water all of this area here. We will make this one a 3/4 poly pipe to carry more water and have the ability to deliver more water. And we will have the one at the foundation bed being 1/2-inch poly pipe. And there's a couple different ways that you can finish that off, the drip system. One is you can put your inline pressure reducer and filter in a box out in the field and then attach it to the PVC pipe and then punch a little hole in a valve box and bring it up to the surface and continue to run to all your plants throughout. That's one way. The other way is to have this either inline meaning underground, or above ground like an anti-siphon valve, and then put your inline pressure reducer and filter on that. 2 different ways. Now, where I used to practice, I'd say 95% of all the valve assemblies were above ground because we weren't in a frost zone 98% of the time. So we didn't have to worry about it. So I would always put the inline pressure reducers coming right off of the downstream part of my anti-siphon valve and then go out and stub up something similar to this right here. This would be your underground supply. Come up right above grade, and then you would put your poly pipe right into a little adapting fitting that you would put in your elbow, and then put your poly pipe into there, and you're off and running in whatever direction. If you have 2 directions, remember to put a T. If you have only 1 direction for your poly pipe, make sure it's an L. Again, don't forget to put a shutoff valve in front of your valve assembly. That way you'll be able to shut everything off if you need to service the valves or replace a valve for some reason. Otherwise, you have to turn off your whole house main system and go from there. Another tip, and that I've done quite a few times in construction, is I have put a ball valve or a gate valve right at my point of connection as well. So you might want to consider that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out is remember our gallons per minute that I've dedicated to each valve. That does not apply to the drip system, but it certainly applies to the pop-up heads that we are going to be using for the lawn. And in this hypothetical, we are using 4-inch pop-up spray heads with van nozzles. And van nozzles are variable angle nozzles. So in one nozzle, you can take them from off and open them all the way up to 365 degrees. And they're a very convenient nozzle, especially if you don't have just rectilinear type of areas to cover, say you had a wandering bed line with lawn in between, you can open those van nozzles up so that it takes care of whatever angle is necessary to get proper coverage. So in this particular case, we are going to designate the perimeter heads as 15 vans. And when I say 15, that means the radius of water being thrown from the head out is 15 feet. And then the center ones here, we're going to have 18 vans. And that means it's 18 feet. So these ones in the center are going to throw water all across the lawn area. And then the perimeter bed heads are going to throw it into. And if you'll notice in the very light arc lines that I have here, you'll notice that the heads are spaced so that when each one comes on, it overthrows the next one by a considerable amount. And that is what you call head-to-head coverage. If this happened to be the hypothetical landscape was in a breezy area, a breezy environment, number one, we would want to water during the time of day and sometimes evenings, depending on the weather pattern. Not too much evening stuff in the springtime. But in summer and early fall, probably early in the morning, a 5, 6 o'clock watering, not 3 in the afternoon. Certainly not. Especially when the breeze comes up, then most of this water, as much as half to 60% of the water being thrown on that lawn in the middle of the day or in the heat of the day, is just going to evaporate, and it's not going to get down to the root systems. And remember last week's video, a correctly constructed irrigation system is going to be the best step towards conservation, because we want to put the water where it needs to be and not where it does not need to be. And we're going to do it during the time of day and during the season when you're going to get the maximum water application for the landscape use. So in this case, since we've put in our valve assembly, we have a 5-valve assembly, and we're going to have color-coded 1 valve for these heads, 1 valve for these heads, and 1 valve for this head. And they're going to come in a trench underground out from the valve assembly, out into the field, we call it, and into the lawn area. Now, whether you do this before all the walkways and everything, that's totally up to you. Check out the book and the course, because I give you some options on how you can approach underground work in the landscape. You can do it before hardscape, or you can do it after hardscape. In this case, we have drawn it correctly, exactly how I was shown in college, how you dot lines underneath walkways, how you jump other pipes and continue on out. And this here would probably require 2 trenches to get all of this in. Maybe 1 trench if your trencher was probably a 4 to a 6 inch trench blade. You would be able to lay those, 3, maybe even 4 pipes right down onto the trench, and you could come out, tee off, come out, elbow in, come out, elbow out, like that. Now remember what I told you last week. Most of the plan done correctly will start your materials list for you. You know that we have a larger drip system here, a smaller one here. So you know automatically you have 2 valves for that, and you have 2 more valves for the inline pressure reducer filter. So there's some parts and pieces starting to tabulate up for you. And then over on your side piece of paper, you're going to want to write that. You're going to put anti-siphon valve or inline valve. How many are you going to need? 5. How many inline pressure reducers? 2. How many valve boxes? 2 or 3. How many shutoff valves? 1 or 2. And you're already starting to shop as you're designing. You really are. So when we talk about the valve box or the valve assembly itself, if you're doing it inline, meaning it's kind of underground, you're going to put it in a valve box that looks very similar to this. And in that valve box, you're going to want to have a gravel base. You may want to put the valve box slightly elevated, have an inch or two of gravel, and then your valves laying nice and neat on that gravel bed. For drainage, for rain percolation, for neatness, if nothing else. So coming out into the field, parts and pieces again, you know that when you bring valve number 1 out, you're going to need a T, then you're going to need various parts to make your sprinkler head connection. And most of the time, I always suggest swing arm connections for lawn heads. Swing arm connections look like this. And basically you can adjust that swing arm, especially you get like a 6-inch swing arm. You can put it onto your PVC L with a threaded 1/2 inch, and you can adjust it. It will literally swing up and down and adjust perfectly, perfect level. So you're like a 1/2 inch below your walkway and a 1/2 inch below your patio. And then you pack your dirt in and around it after you've tested and turned on your valves. Again, the book walks you through that really, really well. So if you are heavily planting the perimeter beds here, okay, all the way around, your 3/4 poly pipe is going to be most likely going to be placed on top of the ground or maybe slightly under. Here's our grade right here. Here's our poly pipe, whether it be the 3/4 or the 1/2 inch. And then you're going to stabilize that pipe and put it in place with ground staples. Probably round head ground staples. The square ones don't work as well. Remember round head or U-shaped ground staples. And you're going to staple it down after you've let that black poly pipe sit out in the sun for a while. Stretch it out with you and a partner. Take that pipe and uncoil it and tug on it and get it nice and pliable. And then from your bed origin here, this one's going to be a T, obviously. You're going to start lining up where you've planted your plants, and you're just going to snake that poly pipe all the way through, catching each plant, each tree, whatever it takes, all the way through, behind the shed, all the plants here, and then down the side of the house, okay? And the same thing goes for the smaller one. It's maybe a 1/2 inch poly, but you're going to run it here, go underneath the master bedroom walkway, and down along the side of the house and over to this bed. Now, remember what I talked about a few minutes ago when you talk about futuristic use of water. Maybe over here someday it might be a dog run. Maybe it's going to be a dog run right away. So consider a 3rd hose bib over here for this area going down the side of the house. If you put in a gate here and Puppers is going to stay over there while you're at work during the nicer times of year, then you're probably going to need a water connection over here so that it can either be an automated water or at least an easy water bowl fill for you, and not having to either bring the bucket back over here or drag a hose over there. Something to consider, okay? So when diagramming something like this out, make sure that you constantly keep a running tally of what you're going to be using. Then when you're all done, hypothetically, maybe you're going to bring in a sprinkler professional that's going to do this. And you're going to take, and you're literally going to hand this to them and say, I'd like an estimate on this sprinkler installation. There is nothing more convincing to a professional that to be able to go to a customer's house and they present something like this. That professional knows that that customer knows what the hell they're doing. But maybe they're physically handicapped. Maybe they have a back injury. Maybe they hurt themselves in work and can't do it, and they're halfway through the project they need to finish. So when we're talking about turning this over to a professional, they're going to give you a very concise estimate, and then they're going to pay attention to what's going on as they're doing their work, because you know what the finished product is going to look like. You know the parts and pieces. And if you decide to do it yourself, it's so much easier because you have taken that from an idea and you've put it on paper, both physically and also mentally. So you know exactly how you need to go about it, and you've empowered yourself through the irrigation design itself on how to finish it. Okay, there you go. There is your irrigation diagram for the hypothetical landscape that I promised you. This is a really super straightforward one. Remember, since you have timer wire that's in your pressurized line, you are going to wire up. Make sure you leave a good 3 feet or more of wire at your valve assembly, and then your timer back here, you're going to run it up into the timer. So you're not going to have a whole bunch. This is a 1/4 inch scale, so you're probably going to have 40 to 50 feet worth of wire here. Not a big expense whatsoever. Just remember to get 7-strand if you have 5 valves. That way you're covered. Guys, that's what I got for you this week. Thank you so much. If you have questions on how to draw out and design your own irrigation system, I'm only an email away. Take a few minutes. youryardcoach@gmail.com. Be happy to answer any of your questions that you have. Please go to the website, check out the course and the book, and see if that doesn't help you. You will be able to review this video, last week's video, and go through the course and the book if you choose, and be able to be ready to go when your project is ready to launch. I'll catch you guys next week. Don't forget Plan of the Week. If you're on the go, check out the podcast this week. I thank you, as always, to your landscape success. I'm Coach. See you next week.